Before your eyes stretches the historic Nenthead Valley. Located in England's northern Pennine Hills, this valley has been witness to nearly 400 years of mining activity by various companies. We're about to look at some of the mining features and the effects this industrial history has had on the stunning landscape of this area. The labours of men, women and children here created an underground network of over 200 miles of tunnels and vertical and horizontal workings. Starting up the valley on a gloriously sunny day, you can see the most obvious effect of the mining. Thousands upon thousands of tons of tips, rocks that either did not contain ore or not enough ore to make it economical to process. Higher up the valley we see one of the old entrances, known as an adit, with a restored shop. This being a simple building where the miners would have lived during the week when not at work. Conditions in these establishments were often so horrendous, it was considered more hazardous to your health than working in the mine itself. Here we were passing another entrance with the remains of its shop. This dates back to around 1770. On the right, you see two shafts belonging to another mine much further down the valley. Continuing up the valley, we see a compressor house. This took the water from a reservoir to higher altitude and used it to create the compressed air that powered the miners' tools deep in the mines. In front of that you can see a leet taking water gathered by the streams to the reservoir we've already seen. Next, we gain altitude rapidly as we climb towards the fells, and as we ascend, you can see the spill tips from the lost smaller mines, together with shafts just littering the landscape, a visible reminder of the activity that once took place in the depths. Even as we reach the top, you can see the scars of numerous shafts. The next valley over, which you can see here, was also the subject of a huge amount of mining. Continuing down the valley, we now direct our attentions to a side valley which was hush mined. An early form of mining, hush mining used water stored in a reservoir at the top of the hill, which was released in one almighty go to remove the topsoil off the ore vein. How devastating this process was will be shown shortly as we see another hush. This particular hush has since been turned into woodland, hiding its scars. Proceeding up the valley that comes off the hush, we find the remains of a particularly old coal mine site with what remains of a shop. You can see how dark the waste tips are here. Apparently during the Second World War, this already abandoned mine was once again worked by the locals to provide coal to the resource-starved village. Returning up the main valley, this time we follow a left branch. This is an area of interest where some very early mining occurred, perhaps from the 1600s. Adits, or tunnel mining techniques, had not yet been developed, and therefore entry to this mine was initially only via shafts, something you can see plenty of as we progress up the valley. Here is a fine example of two of the shafts. If you see these in the landscape of the Pennines, keep away, because if whatever is covering it gives away underneath you, you're in for a fall in some places of up to 900 feet. We are now coming to the main part of this very rarely visited site, with its shop and accompanying shafts. An early adit exists in this area, now lost to time, but it only gave access to a shaft. Coming back down this amazing little valley, we come across this building. I'm not sure if this is actually a farmhouse, the patterns of individual fields behind perhaps suggesting this, unless those were miners' allotments where the miners would grow food and keep animals to help support their income during lean times. Next we're off to see the chimney on the moors. Because of the complaints about the fumes from the smelt mill lingering in the valley, it was decided to build this in the moors to take the fumes a safe distance and altitude. Not much remains today, but you can see the remains of the flue leading to it from the smelt mill. Following the flue back down the valley, you can see the reservoir used to provide power and compressed air for mines further down the valley. Here we see the smelt mill nestled in the valley. This was built in 1737 and used for nearly 160 years. Very little remains now. Earlier I said I would show you the devastation that hush mining can cause to the landscape, and nearby is a prime example of this. Rising initially, gradually, then sharply to a total of around 200 feet, Cowshorse hush measures 3,000 feet in length and is 100 feet deep in places. You can see here the deep grooves cut in the hillside as the miners repeatedly release water down its side to clear off more and more topsoil to obtain the ore which they so desired located beneath. Dating back to the 1700s, by the 1800s, hush mining was considered economically unviable and was replaced with underground mining. Over on the left is a reservoir, likely the one used to create this lower hush. Here, halfway up the hush, is a successor, an adit to underground workings working in the very same vein, but far more economically. We've only just touched on the history of mining in the area and what remains of it, but you can see from this just how very much the activities of men over just under 400 years has so dramatically and permanently changed the natural landscape. At one time considered a blot on the landscape, these days these artifacts are treasured and teams of volunteers constantly work battling the elements and gravity to try and maintain these vast remains, our industrial heritage, perhaps in appreciation of the amount of toil it took and lives taken in their creation.